Hey, happy hump day. Happy hump day, everybody. I thought I would do a quick live so you know it must be coffee time, which it is. And now that I am caffeinated and am in my scheduled little break, I thought I would reach out and talk to myself with the webosphere as an audience. Hope everybody's having a great Wednesday, great hump day. So today I want to talk about something that I talk about often, and I've created this little semi-humorous story to illustrate a point that I find to be very common, something I see out there in many of my discussions, especially with young entrepreneurs or startups or people that are embarking upon new projects and personal endeavors. They do a version of what I describe in this little story. And I think by telling this story, and maybe you hearing this story, might shine light on some of these things and keep you from doing them as often, because I don't think the idea is productive. So basically, the idea is this, and I'm calling it the focusing frog. And you should get why. If not, I'll tell you why. But so it's a story of tell the story of this baker. And how this baker's passion and plan and motive is to create this perfect cake. And he's in his kitchen and he has all his ingredients before him. And he's thinking, okay, what can I do to make the world's greatest cake, to show the world what I can do in making this cake? And as he's sitting there thinking about what he can do, he looks out of the window in his kitchen and he sees these magnificent trees, a forest of these magnificent trees, and he realizes, man, there's nothing quite like a great wooden bowl to mix the ingredients for the cake. So he decides, wow, what would make my cake the greatest in the world was to make them in this great wooden bowl, and I can make them with those trees that I'm looking at. And then he decides, okay, wow, how am I going to get this bowl? So he looks up bowl making, he understands the process, and then he realizes the first thing is to go chop down one of those trees of the right dimension. And then he thinks, wow, okay, if I'm going to have to chop down this tree, what would be the most ideal tool to help me do that in the least amount of time? And he does the research and he realizes that this axe, or the saw, whatever it is going to be the perfect tool to cut down that tree to make a perfect bowl, to make the perfect cake. And then he realizes, okay, I'm not a novice, right? I'm not an amateur. So I'm not going to just take this tool and run out there to do this without some type of know-how and or education. So then he does this little research on how to use this incredible tool to cut down this perfect tree, to make this perfect bowl, to make this perfect cake. And in the process of doing that, he realizes that, wow, you know what? Maybe he should get some help, right? Because he's not a dummy. He's not going to, it'll work faster if he could do it with some help. So he gets some other people that might be interested in helping him cut down this tree and make this bowl. And as you can see, the story is he's focused on what he thinks is the same concept, which is making a cake. And he thinks he's active and busy in the effort of making the cake, because conceptually they are related in the story he's created. But in fact, he's moving further and further and further away from what his intended focus and goal was, which is making the cake. And we see this all the time. People shift what they're focused on to something slightly related to what it is they should be doing. But because they feel busy, engaged, and involved, they feel that they're making progress, when in fact they're not. They're off target. And this is quite common in technology development or projects. We know that this is called scope creep, right? Because you have the scope of a project, and over time, it morphs and grows and turns into something greater than what you intended it to be. But I see this all the time and demonstrated by people doing a lot of different things, whether it's starting a business, starting a project, or just trying to lose 10 pounds. The thing or act that they tend to focus on and put all this mental energy behind and do all this activity around is slightly off the mark of the things that they need to be doing to just take a step forward, right? So be careful Be careful that in your effort of focusing, you're not hopping to different areas of related focus and hopping down this trail like a frog, but hopping away from the things you intended to do. Hence, the frog of focus. And it's easier to do than you think. I see it all the time. I've seen salespeople spend an hour trying to figure out how to make an animation in a PowerPoint work. I've just seen people do all these different things that they feel are related to what they want to do. So it feels like they're doing tasks that are going to help them be more successful. I think that what you should, here's something to try on for size. Something I've found to be useful in my own life's experience is you look at the goal, you look at what you're intending to do, and then you figure out, okay, of the tasks that must be done for this to happen, which are in the area of my expertise. Those are the things you want to do. Those other things, although they need to be done, you want to try to find if there's another way that they can be done outside of you, whether it be delegated, whether you bring in a strategic or real partner, or or use a tool and or service, some type of on-demand service that does that specific thing. Because here's what a lot of people don't understand. They feel that in the effort of delegation, that the product or the idea somehow becomes less them. It loses their DNA. When in fact, I'm going to argue that it can become more of you, because what you're pushing off is when you hand off a piece of the project to people that are passionate just about that piece, one is that deliverable is going to be way better. It's going to probably be done more in line with best practices, but it's going to free you up to put more of yourself in the areas that you are the expert in. So in fact, you are expanding your footprint, your thumbprint on the project, your DNA into the effort by not being focused on these things that are not you. So something to think about. So think about all the effort you applied toward your fill in the blank, which goal you're focused on this week, this month, this year. And ask yourself how much of your personal time, attention, and focus is on areas of the project that are outside of your area of expertise. They need to be done, but they are consuming a disproportionate amount of your time. Because what happens over time when we do this is at some point we're going to have to look at the results, right? And you're going to look at the results and they're not going to match up. So back to the cake, the baker making the cake. In that crazy story I told, you could see that how weeks, if not months later, he could have been busy. He could be really actually exhausted from the effort, from doing all these things. But when you say, hey, is the cake ready? It's just still ingredients on the table. The cake's not, there's no progress that has been made in the area of making the cake. So be careful of becoming a jumping frog, a focused but jumping frog. Stay focused on what is critical. Stay as close to your area of expertise as possible and go make it happen. Back to the time for me to jump back into my Wednesday. I hope you find that useful.